Hello, welcome to the Saroy channel. I'm so excited that you've joined me tonight. I love you guys. Anybody who loves Bigfoot, they're a friend of mine forever. I don't know why we're so fascinated by this elusive creature, but he never ceases to astonish and fascinate us. I've got wonderful stories for you tonight, and this one is no exception. Do make sure you subscribe to the channel. And let's get started with the story. It's a missing persons case, and the person who was the main suspect blamed the missing person on Bigfoot, the disappearance on Bigfoot. So let's get started. Dear Sarah and your listeners, my name is Daisy, and my Bigfoot encounter happened to me when I was staying with my sister Rose in her remote cabin in the heart of the American wilderness in the Appalachian Mountains. My sister Rose was one of the kindest, loving people I have ever known, but she had a penchant for choosing men in her life who would always abuse her. In one relationship, it got so bad that the boyfriend who beat her up was jailed for a whole 18 months. Once again, Rose had fallen in love with a man who was a passionate hunter, but even from the moment I met him, I knew that once again that Rose was caught up in the snares of another pitiful relationship. And I just had this gut instinct that this fellow would start abusing her, because I felt it in the pit of my stomach. It turned out I was right. Rose had phoned me one morning in floods of tears to tell me that not only was her boyfriend abusing her verbally by calling her all kinds of nasty names, but on 2 occasions he'd locked her up in the laundry room for an entire day where she couldn't eat or even go to the bathroom. She said she had also been hit a few times by him and had bruising all over her body to show for it. I tried to persuade her to file a police report and come home to the family, but she was determined to make the relationship work because she had discovered that she was pregnant. It turned out that this boyfriend of hers, called Jason, did not want to have children, so she was too frightened to tell him about the pregnancy in case he had a tantrum and completely lost it. I decided I needed to talk some sense into my sister. So I made plans to stay with her for a few days because I felt that if she carried on dating abusive men, one day she'd find herself in a shallow grave somewhere out in the wilderness. Little did I realize those thoughts would come to haunt me sooner than I realized. My sister was delighted to see me, and she confided in me about how terrifying her boyfriend Jason was. I gather she'd been unable to make friends in his circle of hunting friends, because they were a tight-knit community and did not take kindly to outsiders. I was stunned to realize how alone my sister was and how little time Jason spent at home with her. And when he was home, he was invariably always angry and spent his time watching the box and downing excessive amounts of beer. I decided one of the best ways to talk to my sister was to get out into that lovely, fresh Appalachian mountain air. There was a lake surrounded by beautiful valleys with ubiquitous trees. What would be better than having a picnic by the lake? I remember that day so vividly. It was beautiful and sunny, and the sky was the most gorgeous blue, and the whole area around the lake was filled with the most delightful bird song. On the lake there were wild ducks bobbing on the water, and we even watched a fish eagle darting and diving for fish, until finally, in his sharp talons, we saw that he had caught a big one. We watched him tear the flesh and eat his catch hungrily, and we marveled at how lucky we were to witness such a spectacle. Soon we were tucking into delicious turkey and cheese sandwiches washed down with fizzy colas. And then we noticed that the wild duck had flown off. The bird song had all but ceased, and as for the fish eagle, he was suddenly nowhere to be seen. "Hear that," said my sister. "I do not hear anything," I told her. "Exactly," she said. "That's my point. Why has it suddenly grown so quiet, and just so quickly?" It was indeed eerily quiet. You could have heard a pin drop. There were no animals to be seen anywhere, no deer, nothing, and the lake just shimmered in a silver haze under the mid-morning sun. Suddenly we heard a large rustling sound, like something big was crushing leaf litter and twigs under its feet, and it appeared to be walking through the trees towards the lake, and whatever it was, it sounded very, very large. "A predator," whispered my sisters. "That's why it's gone so deadly quiet. I understand now why that's happened. We must hide." We crouched behind a large tree stump that was about 6 feet wide and about 4 foot high. The rustling sound got louder, and then we could hear the sound of heavy feet getting closer to the lake. The first thing that hit us was the awful smell that I can only describe as smelling like rancid, decaying flesh. It was revolting, and I was beginning to feel really queasy. My sister and I peeked over the right side of the stump closest to the lake, and then we saw it. At first it looked like a big grizzly bear, because this thing was large and covered with long, dense brown hair. Suddenly I noticed the creature's exceedingly long arms that were swinging backwards and forwards, and I realized this was no bear. The creature had hands and not paws, and as it swiveled its head towards our side, he appeared to have a cone-shaped head with a primate-looking face that had some human characteristics about it. The creature walked closer to where we were hiding, and terror rose in my heart. I could feel my heart beating very, very fast in my chest, and all the hair on my arms stood up, and I had goosebumps. I kept praying to God that this thing would never see us, because he was so powerful, so big and dangerous, and I, for one, did not want any close encounter with this thing, whatever it was. I suddenly felt water trickling down my thighs, and realized that I had wet myself in fear. The creature grunted loudly. I do not know how to explain the grunt to you, because it was like a pig, only 10 times deeper and 10 times louder. It was a formidable sound that did not endear us to the creature in the slightest. Suddenly I realized that this was a Bigfoot, and I realized that I was privileged to be this close to a creature that so many have been dying to see. But at this moment I felt anything but privileged and anything but lucky. I just wanted to run away as fast as I could. We were way too close to this creature for comfort. The creature paced up and down the bank of the river, and it was almost like he was in deep thought. When he moved, his walk was fluid and graceful, which was amazing for his 8-foot stature and 900-pound weight. All the time the creature paced, he grunted and grunted. It was weird, to say the least. After a while, the Bigfoot squatted on the ground and stared out over the lake. I promise you, it really looked as if he was basking in the sun and admiring the view. After a while, he started rubbing mud all over his hair from top to bottom, even covering his massive feet with the stuff, as if he was lathering himself with a sun protection lotion. No wonder the thing pongs to high heaven, I thought to myself. We heard a whistling sound of what I thought was a bird call, one I believed I have heard on many occasions. So imagine my surprise when the Bigfoot responded to the call by whistling back. He then got up in large strides, swinging his arms backwards and forwards. He retreated the way he had come, and I marveled at the flawless grace of this spectacular creature. Once the Bigfoot had left, I rose and forgot my fear, and both of us started jumping up and down with excitement. We saw a Bigfoot, we saw a Bigfoot, we cried out with glee. You know what a huge deal this is, and we got such a great view of him. Why don't we go and see if the Bigfoot left a footprint by the lake, I said. And sure enough, larger than life was a massive 19-inch footprint with the big toe splayed outwards in the mud. My sister and I were so excited, and we took dozens of photographs of the footprint with our cell phones. And in order to create a measuring scale, I used my pink glitter ballpoint pen against the print. My sister was so eager to share the good news with Jason, her boyfriend, about the Bigfoot. His eyes grew as round as saucers as he asked us hundreds of questions about our encounter. Did the creature smell? Was he aggressive? How close was he to us? I do believe it's the only time that I've ever seen the man animated. My sister told me that as Jason was in such a good mood because of our Bigfoot encounter, maybe it would be the right time to tell him about the baby. And foolishly, she did. The expression on Jason's face was one of murderous rage. I could see how furious he was that my sister was pregnant, and the only reason he did not lash out at her was because I was there. I think you should have abortion as soon as possible, he said. My sister's face was a picture of horror, and I was proud of her putting her foot down. No, never, she said. I will never get rid of my baby. It is part of me, it is part of you, and I'm not getting an abortion. Never, she said. A couple of days later, I returned to my home, kissing my sister goodbye. Little did I know that this was the last time I would ever get to see her again. 2 days later, police arrived at my door telling me that Jason had reported my sister as having gone missing and that he had found a strange footprint outside the kitchen door, whom he believed belonged to the individual who had abducted or killed my sister. I asked the policeman to show me a picture of the print he found outside the door, and believe it or not, it was my sister's cell phone picture that we had both taken by the lake with the pink glitter pen beside it. I explained to the policeman that Jason was lying and that photograph had been taken by my sister. Inadvertently, Jason had tried to blame Bigfoot for my sister's disappearance. Sadly, all these years later, my sister has never been found, and she's missing, assumed to be dead. And Jason, her boyfriend, remains a person of interest in this case. So there you are, that's my story. Bigfoot was the scapegoat for Jason, who I'm sure may very well know where he has buried my sister. But until we find the body, there is no hope in being able to prove that Bigfoot did not do this, even though the police know that to be true. Until next time, good night.